A very happy Christmas to you all. And of course, in so many ways, Christmas is essentially about the story of a newborn baby. I don't want to sound self-indulgent or even sentimental, but I suppose what's been particularly special in my life in recent weeks has been the arrival upon the scene in my life of not one but two grandchildren, two of my sons and their wives, one in late September and one in late November. So, as has been said to me, grandchildren like buses seem to come in convoys. But I've been getting used to the idea, and I suppose it's a reminder of one's own advancing years, but also a source of great joy. Mind you, I'm beginning to have to be honest with myself that I am no longer 18, as for a very long time I tried to convince myself I was. But it is remarkable to hold a small human being who, all being well, will be alive well into the next century. And one contemplates what sort of a world one will bequeath to those children in terms of climate, in terms of global security, in terms of food sustainability, in terms of the march of AI. They are growing up in a world which we can barely envisage, let alone them, but what by our choices now will we bequeath to them if we have any sense of responsibility to the future? Anyway, as I stood there holding one baby or another, I suddenly found I was feeling a bit like old Simeon, my favourite person in the whole nativity story, and a man that's kind of forgotten because he comes into it late on the scene, 40 days after Christmas, on Candlemas, the 2nd of February, when for most people life has moved on. But at that point, Mary and Joseph bring their newborn baby to the temple in Jerusalem to dedicate him to the Lord, as was the custom, and out of the shadows appear two old people who have been, it would seem, faithfully in and out of the temple all their lives in expectation and hope of seeing a great thing. And suddenly old Simeon realizes this is no ordinary baby. He takes it in his arms and he sings a song which we call the Nunc Dimittis to this day, describing the Christ who has arrived as the light to lighten the Gentiles. And it's the great climax and zenith of Christmas insight. And I love that it comes from faithful old Simeon, whose song we love to repeat, sometimes at the very end of our own lives. Simeon is extremely perceptive. He realizes that with birth, as I've hinted at already with my own grandchildren, with birth there comes a certain bittersweetness, both of joy and apprehension. And as Simeon looks back towards Christmas and the significance of the arrival of the light, he also looks to the cross, to the cost of it all, the suffering that will be brought to Mary, how Jesus will bring about division as well as hope. And somehow in his song and in his witness, he reminds us that the coming of Christ is a bittersweet thing into a human context that is of its very nature bittersweet. The human predicament, our own human experience, is all about bittersweetness, really. We can't have joy without pain. We can't have light without shadows. We live in a world both of gain and of loss. We, in Shakespeare's famous phrase, often weep to have what we fear to lose. Being human is to experience the profundity of the predicament of bittersweetness. And if the gospel can't shine a light upon the bittersweetness that is part of our journey through this world, then it is no gospel. And Simeon is an introduction to bittersweetness, to reality, but also to perceptiveness and to light. So I feel a bit like old Simeon, and I don't feel sorry to feel a bit like old Simeon. And I hope that all of you at Christmas, not least of you, those of you who have new babies and new grandchildren to observe, I hope you will be able to sing a little bit with Simeon, something of what it means to see salvation. A happy, blessed and enlightened Christmas to everyone. Nollaig Honna Díobh Galéir.